right, Pickle. Let's head on over to the hotline and let's bring in former Mean Green alum and Dallas Cowboys team reporter, Miss Hailey Sutton. Hailey, how you doing, girl?
Hi, I'm going to be honest. I'm exhausted. It's been a wild couple of weeks,
I completely
but I'm
understand.
excited. I'm doing good.
Thank you so much for coming on. I know, like you said, it's been a busy couple weeks for you, but we're super excited to talk to you about the NFL draft and you know how the Dallas Cowboys did. But before that, for all of our viewers, you know, watching our show, we love our guests to talk about themselves for a little bit. So kind of give us your elevator pitch. You know, who are you? Where do you work? And how did you get to where you are now?
Oh my gosh, girlies, we need more than a day to talk about how I got here. No, I'm just kidding. My name is Hailey Sutton. I'm currently the team reporter for the Dallas Cowboys. I also host a couple of shows with fellow Mean Green alum Kyle Yeoman. So a lot of Mean Green up here in the Cowboys facility at the Star in Frisco. So yeah, that basically just means I'm doing a little bit of everything. We podcast up here like crazy, host a couple TV shows. I get to kind of get close with the players, share their stories, do a lot of features. I'm working on a recap right now for the home run derby last night that raised a lot of money for a lot of really great charities. So fun stuff like that. Born and raised right here in Texas. I graduated from Red Oak High School before going down to Texas A&M Corpus Christi to play soccer and get my undergrad degree. And then I transferred to the University of North Texas to finish my soccer career with the John Headland.
Yes.
Graduated from North Texas with my master's in journalism. And then I did the wildest thing and I moved to Montana for my first job. I spent 2 years up in Great Falls, Montana, covering everything from six-man football, a little bit of rodeo, did some interesting water sports coverage up there. So definitely interesting times up there. Then I went to Alabama. Covered a little SEC football, a couple national championships before heading to Miami for a few months. I was working at a television station in Miami, and then Kyle picked up the phone and said, hey, come work with us here at the Cowboys facility, and the rest is kind of history. So I've been here creeping up on 7 months now, but it feels like it's been an eternity just with the way that our schedule and everything works. We're kind of cruising into the official off season the next couple of weeks. So we'll be excited to kind of reset and refresh. And then training camp will be here in July.
Man, I'm telling you, that Mean Green connection is strong. I think all three of us can agree to that. It really is strong in the DFW area. We're leaving our mark for sure. Now, like you said, you were a standout soccer player at the University of North Texas, and what a standout program that Coach Headland has been at the helm over there. What was it like, you know, being covered by sports journalists, I guess you could say, you know, being interviewed by everybody that wanted to cover the UNT soccer team, to transitioning into a sports journalist, I guess, yourself?
Yeah, it was interesting because while I was playing soccer, you know, I was getting my master's degree. And when I was at UNT, I always tell people I never slept because I did, you know, absolutely everything. I worked for the production team up there, Mean Green Productions, doing everything from shooting games and then eventually working my way onto some on-air stuff for them. I interned with ESPN Radio. I interned at Fox Sports Southwest. I was freelance writing for a newspaper in Prosper, all while getting my master's degree and also being a teaching assistant for some awesome professors. So I really honestly didn't have a chance to think about it. I was just so determined to make it in this business. I know as women, and you guys can probably echo this, it's doubly, triply challenging for us to be able to, you know, get our foot in the door, have that respect. And so my goal was to not give anyone an excuse to not hire me, or to not give anyone an excuse to not take me seriously. And so, you know, a lot of times I would see what other journalists were doing, how they were covering things and saying, you know, how can I apply this to my own self? And I try to keep that at the forefront now that I'm, you know, where I am today, just making sure that those small morals and the things that I learned really early on, how that can kind of connect and carry over into what I'm doing right now. So it is super humbling. I actually just emceed the Scrappy Awards up there on Monday, and that was such like a humbling full circle experience because my last year I was there was the first year they started doing Scrappies. So it made me feel a little bit old, but also just was so cool to look at, you know, the next generation of whatever those athletes in the room plan on doing, just being the liaison for them and hopefully continuing to be a role model to people in this industry. It's super humbling, but I mean, I got to be honest, I'm still learning every day. There's things that I can continue to grow and learn from. And there's so many incredible people just in the DFW area that you can take a lot from. So it's still a journey, but yeah, it's definitely full circle moment a lot this year.
Well, and that really, I mean, it leads in perfectly to the fact that obviously you went through your train of getting to where you are at now, and obviously there is a big difference between working at a local news station from Montana all the way down to the high market of Miami, but now you've really been able to fully transition over into being able to cover one specific team, really being the inside expert on the beat for that. What has that transition been like with you? Because when you're MMJing, you were doing everything about every team and all of that. Now it's like, hey, you're still doing it in a lot of different ways, but it's all about one subject. How has that transition been for you?
Yeah, it was difficult at first because as someone coming from local news, you know, number one, the way my brain operates, it's like, okay, I have this at this time. I have this at this time. My deadline is this time. So how much can I get done in this time period? And I know exactly where it's going. I know that I'm flipping a package for the 4:00 newscast. Then I have to turn around and shoot highlights for the 10:00 show. Mm-hmm. Here, it's obviously a little bit different because our content goes out at different times. Your deadlines are a little bit different. And so it's really kind of given me the creative freedom to work on certain projects, give them a little bit more love, kind of be able to touch up on my editing skills a little bit. And then on the flip side of that too, you know, like this is an interesting role because, you know, you're developing into a personality. And I hate using that term because I think it's so cheesy, but the reality is, especially within the Cowboys fan base, they look to a lot of us in the building as, you know, their go-to personalities, their go-to people. And so I've had to step up my game when it comes to, you know, how am I covering the team? Like, how am I watching film? How am I analyzing these players? Am I looking at them from the lens of, you know, the rookies coming in next week, for example? Are we going to evaluate them based on, you know, their skill set and what they bring to the table, and separating that from the fact that I've been a Cowboys fan since I could walk? Mm-hmm. So that was a difficult transition, but it's really, like I said, it's all about just recognizing that, you know, you're here to do a job. And this is, I would argue, one of the hardest jobs in sports journalism because everybody knows this team. Everybody loves to either love this team or everybody loves to hate this team. And as media representatives for the organization, we fall into that same category. They either love you or they hate you. So it's really all just about, you know, like developing myself just as a more well-rounded reporter, going from, you know, talking to the guys in the locker room and hearing, you know, that Jake Ferguson is excited to welcome another tight end into the group so that he can fit into the 4 horsemen, but then taking that information and looking at it on film. Well, what does that mean? How is Luke Schoonmaker going to come in and make a difference? Because Mike McCarthy expects him to be a starter, but does he have starting capability? Does that mean that he's affecting Jake Ferguson's playing time? Is that a position battle we have to watch? So it's all just about, you know, shifting your mentality and taking, you know, what I've learned from local news and almost shifting it to more of like an analysis as opposed to like, I've got to get a report out because my deadline is coming up, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and it's kind of cool too, because I guess you don't really have to be neutral, like a neutral reporter, because you are the Dallas Cowboys team reporter. So you can let that, you know, favoritism show just a little bit. It doesn't really have to be pushed aside. So let's talk a little bit about that little thing that happened this weekend, the NFL draft. From an outside perspective, it looks like the Cowboys did pretty well. So I'm curious to know, as the team reporter, what would you grade on an A, B, C, D, F scale? What would you grade the Dallas Cowboys overall from this weekend?
Yeah, I would give them a B. And the only reason why it's not an A is because, you know, you've got to see these guys perform. You can't give these guys grades when you've never even seen how they suit up against, you know, other professional athletes. So I give them a B. I think the biggest thing that the Cowboys fans really have to keep in the forefront is that the front office went into this draft knowing that there were very specific things that they needed to address. The number one issue for the Dallas Cowboys last year was the run defense. They had a difficult time stopping the run, mostly because they had shifted Micah Parsons out to more of an edge. And so he was trying to keep that side of, or keep the edges rather contained, leaving a lot of space on the defensive line. You brought in Jonathan Hankins at the trade deadline. He made a big impact and then he got hurt. And you saw immediately the drop off of that run defense that had improved when you brought in Jonathan Hankins. So what did they do when they go into the draft? Their first pick, they take 330, 6'4", Mozzie Smith, who is absolutely going to clog up any holes on that interior defensive line. And then the next issue that they have to address is blocking. But what a lot of people don't recognize with the release of Ezekiel Elliott is one of his best qualities was pass protection. He was an incredible blocker for Dak Prescott. And a lot of times the reasons why we didn't see that explosive run that we were used to seeing in vintage Zeke was because his role had shifted a little bit. He was a red zone scorer and a pass protector. So what do you do in that? You go in the second round and you draft a Luke Schoonmaker, a guy whose bread and butter is blocking, playing in that Michigan offensive scheme. So I really liked how they went in, they addressed things that needed to be addressed off the top. And then it kind of became a luxury down the stretch, like, well, now how can we get creative? We can add a DeMarvion Overshown in, who's going to be a linebacker for us, but also has some really great special teams ability. And they just kind of kept going down the checkpoint. And then obviously the Deuce Vaughn story. I mean, I couldn't have been more excited for that as someone who got to meet and chat with Deuce Vaughn at the Combine. This was really like a cool full circle moment for him to be in here. And he's the ball player. So I think they really did a good job of addressing the things that needed to be addressed. Now the next layer is those rookies coming in and even the undrafted guys that they added after the draft is seeing who are going to be guys who are going to compete for spots on that 53.
Absolutely. And now looking ahead to the 2023 season, obviously a lot of momentum coming off of a really, record-breaking year for the Cowboys last year. How are they going to build off the momentum from, everything that they were able to achieve last year, especially in the postseason?
I think the glaring issue is obviously the deflating loss to the 49ers in back-to-back seasons, especially when they happened in very similar fashions. And listen, these guys don't forget. The team word last year was resilience, and that word was selected by Mike McCarthy because of how much this team wanted to come back from that 2021 season and make progress. And I think they did make progress. It's obviously frustrating when your team doesn't make it to the Super Bowl, but they did a lot of good things last year, especially when you factor in the fact that your starting quarterback didn't play for the first 6 games of the season. You had your backup quarterback in, and you were able to make it. I mean, Cooper Rush went 4-1 to start the year. Like, that was the reason why this team was so successful, that and the defense, obviously. So now, back-to-back years of difficult finishes in the postseason. We got past the first round hump. So I think Mike McCarthy's big thing is you have to keep building. And with him taking over play calling responsibilities, it shows how much Jerry Jones has built that trust within him. He's going to have a little bit more control. He's already shown that he is committing to being more of a run-first team. He's committing to utilizing his tight ends in a way that's a little bit more creative. And then obviously the defense under Dan Quinn is pretty much unstoppable, especially given the pieces that they've added. So the number one thing I would say about these guys is they're committed. They're out here at practice every day. Most of them are here. It's voluntary workouts right now. I think the only guy who comes to mind who's not here is Micah, and he's down in Austin training to get bigger and stronger and faster and all of that. So I think this group has the sour taste in their mouth again. They're super committed to the process, and they like each other a lot. And I know that sounds like such a silly thing, but I think why they were so successful in those moments when Cooper Rush is behind center is because everybody on the team has each other's back. There's no cliques. There's no drama. There's no he said, she said. They all take accountability, and they all want to win for one another. And so as much as the on-the-field stuff is important, that stuff is important as well. And so I think now you get a nice draft class in again for back-to-back seasons. You filled in those positions. All that's left is to go out there and play ball. So it feels pretty good from the offensive or from the off-season standpoint.
Well, as a Dallas Cowboys fan myself, you got me pretty hyped for the season. I am really, really excited. She is Dallas Cowboys team reporter, Miss Hailey Sutton. Hailey, really, really appreciate your time coming in and hopping on our all-female podcast. And do you want to give a little plug to you? I know you guys have an all-female podcast as well. It's Girls Talk, Boys Talk.
Yeah, our awesome group of gals, Aisha Morrison and Jess Navarez. It was pioneered by Jane Slater, who is the NFL network reporter for the Cowboys. And she's really kind of allowed us to spread our wings and develop in our own ways as she's, doing all the things that off season's required of her. But I just want to flip it back and give you guys a shout out because, when we were starting and we were getting into this, the idea that women could talk football or talk sports in general is still kind of taboo. It's changing every day, but it's really exciting just to see how many powerhouse women just in Texas alone are stepping up. They're holding everyone to a higher standard, but really just proving that, you don't have to take a snap of NFL football to understand the game. You don't have to ever have even played football to understand the game. Right. You can talk and you can learn and you can develop. So I'm really proud of you guys too, especially coming from the same college, and we're all out here setting the tone. So a lot of good content to choose from for our Texas listeners.
Absolutely. She is Miss Hailey Sutton. Hailey, really appreciate your time. I hope to see you soon and try and get some sleep here in the next couple of days.
Thanks, Hailey. No, what sleep? We don't need that.
There she goes, Hailey Sutton. You can follow her on Twitter @_Hailey Sutton for all your Dallas Cowboys news and notes and whatever you'd like.